You are here on 104.1 KQTH, and joining you is Chuck Audrey, sitting in for Casey Bartholomew, rocking the airwaves until 10 a.m., talking politics, religion, and whatever else comes into our mind. We did have Esther on hold, but it looks like Esther couldn't hang on. She wanted to talk a little minimum wage, but that's okay, because we're going to shift gears here, and we're going to go back to the elections. We're going to go back to the allegations that our elections have been hacked. Now, maybe they have, but I don't think it's the Russians doing the hacking. Well, number one, the NSA couldn't even tell you which Russians or that they were specifically connected to the government. They just say, yeah, here's these screen names, and we think they are. Now, there's election hacking going on, but it's not the Russians that are doing the hacking. It's elections officials themselves. And in fact, it's the government themselves. In fact, there were two separate states, Georgia one of them, that were quoted as saying, oh yeah, we were hacked, but the IP address was Department of Homeland Security. So, I guess the Russians must have broke into DHS then, huh? Yes, indeed. Well, on that note, joining us is one of the preeminent electoral integrity activists out there. It's John Brakey of Audit, Arizona. Thank you so much for joining me this morning, John.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. It really is.
Well, it's a pleasure having you here because, everybody's up in arms about the election, and I think the main question on everyone's mind is, was it legitimate? You know, did the Russians really hack it, or did elections officials hack it? Were there illegal aliens out there presenting false IDs and able to vote? What's going on? Let's start with the recount. Let's start, in Wisconsin.
Well, I did go to Wisconsin, and it was a tremendous experience. It was very heartbreaking to know that the American people could spend $7.3 million, raise it, to pay other Americans to go ahead and count it, and we couldn't, and they wouldn't let us. In 5 states, we tried. In Wisconsin, we probably had the most luck because we got about half the state counted, but the other half was not counted at all by hand. It was done by machine, and it's like going to an ATM machine and asking for a second receipt. And, when I went into Wisconsin, I went with a team of, I put a team of 2 teams together. We were working with the Stein campaign. I had one of the best lawyers in the United States, a guy named Chris Suter, who had the pleasure of working with him, and he's been doing recounts since 1984, okay? And in fact, he was the guy who ran the Al Franken $15 million recount, because that's what it came out to. Had 800 lawyers working for him. And so we came into the state, and we knew we had 72 counties. And half those counties decided to go ahead and machine count, and the other half said not.
Hang on just a second. You're telling me that more than double the money was spent recounting Al Franken's race alone than on a presidential election?
Yeah, exactly. It's
incredible. My, how priorities have fallen.
Yeah. But the amazing thing is that over Thanksgiving, just after Thanksgiving, the American people said, yeah, I'll give $29. Or there was 161,000 donors. The average donation was around $48, even though some people would like to say that, the money was raised by private corporations trying to challenge,
Well, what about George Soros? There's a lot of allegations that George Soros and liberal billionaire organizations were pouring money into the coffers.
Not into this coffer. I can tell you right now, even though I've been accused of taking George Soros money. It's interesting to have people attack you on that and have no facts. I mean, this money was all raised through the Federal Elections Commission. Every dollar given had to be recorded and reported, and so I don't think we're going to find any George Soros funds there at all. And if he did, he couldn't give more than $2,700.
So let's get out of the speculation and let's get into the actual facts. The voting machines, one of the things they tell us, well, they can't be hacked because they're all independent and they're just in their own little precincts. But what they don't tell you is that almost all of the vote machines, especially the e-vote machines, are connected to the internet.
That's what we found. I was shocked. I really was. And I was with, like I said, one of the top lawyers in the country, and I'm in Milwaukee. And all of a sudden, we're talking to one of the head people in the commission, and I say to him, gee, from the precinct, how does your results come in? Do they use a soft shoe network, 2 people, Democrat, Republican? Or do you use a telephone phone modem where you plug in a phone cord? Or do you use a SIM card? And he said, oh, we use a SIM card. And I go, whoa, gee, that's interesting. And I walked away and I said, I don't believe him. This is incredible. Because the FBI director declared that these machines are never connected to the internet. So then we go to other counties and we're finding out, whoa, this is a lot of counties have these little SIM cards, and which is a cellular phone modem on a private network, supposedly, which, most election fraud's always done by insiders. I mean, look in the state of Arizona. I've been on the top of Arizona for 12 years. I caught one guy who was, programming 11 to 12 out of the 15 counties for the last 10 years in the state of Arizona. Loading these databases through telephone phone modems, or in some cases emailing it to them with a password and a separate email. Folks, these are all facts. These are things I've been working on over the years. I mean, it's incredible to know that I live in a state that this is all very possible.
Okay, so what does that mean? Let's dumb it down a little bit for somebody who's not quite technical. What does that mean? Does it mean that these machines are vulnerable to being hacked?
Totally.
Completely. Okay.
Fraction magic is a real deal. Fraction, how these databases are attacked and done is a pretty incredible process. Most people think that their vote is a whole vote. But the reality is they've used fractionizing in the votings in order to weigh the elections, is that they can determine, and the reason why they have to have fractionalization of the vote is to make 51 and 49 work out real well, or any percentage they give, because let's say if 99 people or 999 people show up to vote, and you did a 51-49 split, you would have to be a 51.155. That way you get a roll up and a roll down, that it would balance, because you always take the voters who voted as one number, and then how many actual ballots they have to match each other, and fractionalized voting.
Robot or computer programmers are actually complaining about having to use decimals?
They don't have to, but they do. The hacker does.
Well, okay, the hacker does, but
Yeah.
I mean, you were talking about this hypothetical if only 999 people
Right.
in a precinct. What's wrong with adding a decimal point there? I mean, or are you saying that's why they're doing the fractioning?
That's why they're doing the fractioning, because it would be one person, one vote, where you could go ahead and program an outcome. I want 125 over here, and I want 75 over there. You could, and how this is done, it's done on a precinct type level when you do hacking like that. And then we've even found out how they can, hack real quick, is that if there is some kind of a random check and if you don't, like I'm always fighting in this state to say, hey, before you do that little random audit that we pulled together in 2006, which I helped pass, even though it's not what we wanted, we were able to go ahead and have the election results committed before you do the lottery. And I'm always fighting Maricopa or Pima County and saying, whoa, before you do the random pull to see what minor precinct we're going to pull, they wouldn't commit the results beforehand completely and properly. And even though, in our state, 85% of the vote now is vote by mail, okay, which is totally unprotected completely. They say that they do these spot checks and they stop the ballots going midstream and they make a pile of 200 ballots or whatever. But these 200 ballots, they're not by precinct. There could be 200 ballots out of 440 precincts. And what are they checking against? You compare results against historical results. And when you pull 200, it's like, well, let's think Volkswagen. I mean, Volkswagen built a car that a diesel engine that knew it was computerly being checked and it being tested, and the computer would know that it had to go ahead and fool the emissions, and they did that 11 million times. It's like a flat screen TV, see, 5-star energy efficient. The minute you plug in the tester, the screen goes dim to cheat.
Ah, so they're programming the hacks in just to cover their tracks before the fact.
Yeah, there's so many different ways. I mean, that's why elections aren't any good in my book unless, 1, they're transparent, 2, they're trackable, which is chain of custody, and 3, publicly verified. And that's the new fight I'm in, for the last 6 months with Pima County, is that we're in a lawsuit right now about ballot images, because our new system creates a ballot image of the exact ballot front and back. And it's a process that is here for the whole country, because the future of voting is ballot images. And, you know, first off, the old system is the system that we used. We were in school many years ago, and we did the Iowa test, and you filled in the oval. It's called marked sensor technology. It's a dead technology. It's gone. Everything obsolete completely. Okay, the new systems that are coming in is like the one that we have, which is the ES&S 850, which you put the ballot into the machine, and then it makes a copy of that ballot, digitize it, and then uses that copy in order to count. And, you know, and our Judge Gordon, he really got it in our case, you know, because being that, you know, we're activists and haven't got a lot of money, we broke the case in two parts. One was to make sure that they preserve the ballot images because they're part of the chain of custody. And this judge was very astute, and I use this analogy a lot, is he said to the defendant, Pima County, he said, well, let me ask you a question. If you take my ballot and you make a photocopy of that ballot, what makes you think, and you use that photocopy to count, what makes you think you can destroy the ballot images because it's part of the chain of custody?
Very good question. And if you'd like to ponder it with Mr. Brakey and myself, you can join us here at 751-1041. We're going to take a quick commercial break and listen to some advertisers. I'm Chuck Audrey, and this is Tucson's News and Talk, 1041 KQTH. Right now at 1041KQTH.com. Hello, everybody. This is Chuck Audrey here sitting in for Casey Bartholomew and talking election integrity with one of the preeminent activists out there in the field right now, John Brakey of the organization Audit AZ, Audit Arizona. And call-in number here on KQTH. Let's get back to that electoral skullduggery that's going on. A big part of the problem is GEMS. GEMS stands for Global Election Management System, and that is the Windows-based program that runs pretty much most of the election software in the United States. Am I right?
Well, only for the Diebold Global, but you know, it's one company. But there's one thing about all these voting companies is that they all have STDs.
Really?
Yeah, software transmitted disease. Okay, and so they're all related, and they all basically have fractionalization built into them, and we know that, and from the studies that we've done over the last 12 years. I work very closely with Bev Harris of Black Box Voting, as well as the Election Defense Alliance, Vote Trust. I'm on their board now. Recount Now is a new group, and then of course, you know, anybody who wants to read what we're up to, they can go online and they can go to electionnightmares.com, because I've been doing this so long that I come up on every cycle. I try to name what's really going on. I mean, you know, first off, it was Audit AZ, which I'm still am that, and then my second group was called CARE, Citizens Against Rigged Elections. And then the next cycle, people said, you know, I want to be for something rather than against something. So we formed COVE, which is Citizens Oversight for Verifiable Elections. In this cycle, we named it right. It was a nightmare, election nightmare. Starting off, I canvassed pretty much the whole country through the whole cycle.
It was certainly a nightmare for any Democratic voters who wanted to vote for Bernie Sanders. If they showed up and found out that they hadn't been stripped from the voting rolls, then they were oftentimes given provisional ballots, and I think we know what happens to those. Folks, we are coming up to the top of the hour, and I have been speaking with John Brakey, one of the preeminent electoral integrity activists out there, and he was on the ground in Michigan and Wisconsin and the other states where they were doing the recount. And we've been giving you as much information as we can. It's definitely a large ocean to pour into a very small teacup, but I thank you very much for coming and doing the pouring, John.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Yes, indeed, folks. We are coming up. You're going to hear some news here right at the top of the hour, and we will come back and we'll lighten it up a little bit, talk a little bit of entertainment. I'm Chuck Audrey. This is 1041 KQTH, Tucson's News and Talk.
Good. I'm glad I made it in. I got your hair.
I really appreciate you coming down.
You bet.
A lot of fun.
Let's see what